There are a lot of you. Hang on just a second. I want you guys to smile for me real quick. Hold on. My mom is not going to believe this, so I'm just going to go ahead. It's like a panoramic wave. There we go. That's perfect. I should probably tweet that, but yeah, say hi to my mom. That's great, yeah. So, man, it's an honor to be here with you guys, and I want to just thank Johnny for inviting me to come. He's definitely taken a big risk because he's never heard me speak before. So it's quite possible that I'll crash and burn before this is over. It's also highly likely I'll say something that's inappropriate. But he's a risk taker. You got to love him. He's taken a big risk. But I have such great respect for this university. I've heard so many great things about it and seen so many of your alumni and students that I've gotten to know that are incredible. And so it really is an honor to be able to come and share with you guys today. I know that many people have stood on this stage that are amazing communicators, amazing preachers. I can assure you that I'm definitely not a preacher. My dad's not a preacher. My grandfather's not a preacher. In fact, I think probably the closest thing to a preacher in my family tree would maybe be my aunt, Sister Michelle. She's a Catholic nun, and that's about as close as I get to preacher in my family tree. But what I've learned in my life so far is that God somehow takes these inadequate parts of me, these parts that aren't very well polished and aren't very capable, and He does things that I never thought were possible. And so my prayer today is that somehow these words, as I'm trying to just get them out of my mouth and they fly through the air, that somehow God will take those words and they'll make them exactly what you need to hear before it hits your ear, like magic. That's probably not something a pastor should say, magic. Crap. I shouldn't say that either. All right, I'm just going to get started. So, one of the people that influenced my life in a tremendous way was my youth pastor. All of us have had people that have invested in us, and my youth pastor, he was an incredible influence in my life, and so much so that for years after I was able to have his influence on my life, I always respected him and always kind of leaned on him for advice and would look for him for anything that he could provide insight on. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I was able to go visit him. I moved to Oklahoma. He moved to Indiana. I went and visited him in his house in Indiana. That's right. Indiana's a great state too. Yeah. We could do that all day, couldn't we? Every place I name, you guys are from all over the place. Well, we were talking one time, and that when I met with him that night, and he said, "You know, I really love Oklahoma City." We got talking about the town that I live in, and I said, "What do you love about Oklahoma City?" And he said, "You know, the people are great in Oklahoma City." And he goes, "And my favorite Mexican restaurant is in Oklahoma City." And I thought, that's not a big surprise. There's great Mexican restaurants in Oklahoma City. I said, "What's the name of it?" He goes, "I can't remember the name of it." He goes, "But what I remember is that it had a buffet." And I'm like, "A buffet? What are you talking about?" He goes, "Yeah, and it had all you can eat strawberry shortcake." I said, "I thought you said it was a Mexican restaurant." And he's like, "Yeah, no, it's my favorite Mexican restaurant in the entire world. It's in Oklahoma City. And it has a buffet, and it has all you can eat strawberry shortcake." And he goes, "Hang on, I'm gonna remember the name of it." And so he stood there and he goes, "It starts with a P. It's Ponchos." I'm like, "Ponchos? That's your favorite Mexican restaurant?" None of you are laughing because you've never been to a Ponchos, but if you've been to Ponchos, you would know that Pancho's is like, saying Pancho's is your favorite Mexican restaurant is like saying that McDonald's is your favorite seafood restaurant because of that Filet-O-Fish sandwich. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And I'm sitting there thinking, how in the world could my youth pastor, who I respect so much, be so wrong about something? How is this possible? And what I realized was that he's never been to a real Mexican restaurant. With all respect to you that are in Indiana, where he lives in Indiana, they don't have a real Mexican restaurant. And what he's suffering from is really a lack of perspective. He doesn't know what a good Mexican restaurant is. And what I realize is that so many times in my life, that's the same with me. There's times where I'm looking at something a certain way, and if God could just help me look at it in a different perspective, there's so much more that he would have me see, but I'm limiting my perspective. I'm limited by what I'm able to see. And Jesus even talked about this in the Bible when he talked about why he spoke in parables. He said, even though they see, they still don't see, and though they hear, they still don't hear or understand. And so he was trying to talk to them in parables so that they could see it perhaps in a different way. So what I want to do today for part of our time is I want to challenge the way that we see things just for a moment. And perhaps when we do that, maybe God could use that in a way to challenge the way that you're thinking about a situation, or maybe thinking about where you're at. And that's actually the first question I want to challenge us with, is the question of where are you? So if I ask that question, many of you would say, well, we're at Liberty University, which is true. Some of you might say we're in Virginia. That's right. We love our states. But for those of you that are watching online, you might answer differently. Now, this next way you might answer would not probably be a typical way to answer, but it is true. You might say we're on Earth. That's true. That's right. Everybody can cheer for Earth. It's a bit strange, but that is true as well. But a way that I answer that question, or a way that I think about it, is when I say, where are you? I think I'm in 2013. And you might say, that's not really where, that's more of a when. But I actually think about where we are as occupying a place or a space in time and in history. Like we're here occupying this time. That's where we are today. So if you take a look at this graph, if you have it on the screen somewhere, you'll see that this graph represents the growth in the population of the world for the last 2,000 years. And that rectangle there, that represents roughly, approximately, the sliver of time and space that you and I are occupying. And you can tell, you don't have to be a math major to figure out that there's something going on the graph during that little slice of time in history. The population is exploding. And it's happening not 100 or 200 years ago, it's happening right now in this time that you and I are living in. You see, there's over 7 billion people that are alive today. And we have these amazing tools and technologies, from communication technology to transportation technologies and all sorts of things that actually knit us together with this population like never before in human history. So I'm on staff at a church, and our mission is to lead people to become fully devoted followers of Christ. You guys are training up champions for Christ. And so when we look at those dynamics and say, that's what's happening right now, we could see that as a huge opportunity. But if you think about it, you think God could have placed us here at any other place on this timeline, but he chose to place us here right now during this space when all of these things are happening. I don't actually see it as an opportunity. I look at it as a huge responsibility, that we're not here on accident. God placed us here, gave us these tools, all at this moment in history, and that we have to do something with them to share the gospel with this world. We don't really have an option. You see, there's also several major changes that are going on right now, right at this period in time. Things that were the same way for many, many, many years that are changing right in front of our eyes. These are just kind of some random examples, but to give you an idea, For 305 years, print advertising was the dominant form of advertising. For 305 years, it was the same way. But now, online advertising just in the last 2 years has passed print advertising. Something that was the same way for 305 years is now changed during this time that we occupy. Take, for example, television. For 82 years, television has been primarily created and delivered the same way. We'd have television stations, they put together programs, they would put them on at a certain time slot, we'd tune in to watch TV at that time. But now we have Netflix and Roku and DVRs, and we want to watch things that we want to watch, when we want to watch them, where we want to watch them. We want to be able to rewind them, fast forward them, back up, turn around, whatever. We want to be able to do that now, and that's something that's changed the same way before that's changed. I don't have a slide for this, but this university is right in the middle of watching education be done the same way for many, 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 many years. And this university is in the middle of watching it and actually leading it, and as it changes right during this period of time. My son, his name's Robbie, he's 5 years old. When he was 3 years old, we were driving down the road and I turned on the radio, something we didn't typically do, but I turned the radio on and this song came on that he knew. He's a 3-year-old at the time, and he kind of sings along, and you can tell that he knows the song. The song gets over, and what does he say? Play it again. That's exactly what he said. And so I said, I can't play it again. And he says, yes, you can. Play it again. And he starts crying and throwing a fit in the back of the car. He has no idea how the radio works because his entire life knows nothing of that. He wants to be able to listen to what he wants to and rewind it. He doesn't even comprehend it. That's how things have changed and how quickly they've changed. What about the Bible? For 558 years since the invention of the printing press, we've seen this explosion of distribution of the Bible in the format of a book all over the world in lots of different languages. For 558 years, it's been the same way. So much so that we have songs like the B-I-B-L-E. Yes, that's the book for me, not the scroll, not the tablet, not something that's the book for me. We've grown to see it only as that because for 558 years, that's the format that the Bible has been in. But what about now? Could we be at a moment in history where we're able to witness something that's been the same way for many, many years that now in this generation is changing? That was the question that I was asking myself in the O'Hare Airport back in 2006. I was standing in this long TSA security line. There were hundreds of people in front of me. Have no idea at all why I was asking this question, but I was bored or something, but that's what I was thinking about. And I was asking this question, could we be at one of those moments in time where the right technology and the right tools are there, that if we could leverage them, that perhaps it could change how this generation and many generations to come could engage in the Bible? Now, right there in the security line, this idea came that ultimately became the Bible app, as you guys know, YouVersion. Now, some people say, where did the name YouVersion come from? How many people think they know where the word YouVersion comes from? It's kind of a loaded question. You're not going to raise your hand because you know that I'm getting ready to tell you something different. So, YouVersion, for those of you that are marketing, YouVersion came from 800 feet of careful market research from the security line to the gate at the airport. It was literally just the best name that I came up with before I got to the plane. And that's all the thought that went into this name. But I'm an activator, and so I actually registered the domain name youversion.com before I even got on the airplane that day in October of 2006. And went on in 2007, and we built a website. Now, most of you guys know YouVersion as the Bible app that's on your phone or your tablet. Many of you don't know that YouVersion started as a website. And the reason that many of you don't know that is that nobody went to that website in 2007. It was a failure. We actually started it and thought this is going to change how we engage in the Bible, and it really didn't do anything. We personally were using the website only because we created it and we felt like we had to, but not because we wanted to. And so we were about to shut it down. In fact, we were about really probably a couple weeks away from just shutting the whole thing down and trying something different or just moving on to another project. And we thought, what if we just designed this website so that we could view it on our Blackberries at the time, back in 2008, just a smartphone, just a simple way to view the web page. Not an app. They didn't have the concepts of apps and everything like we know today back then. So that's what we did. In early 2008, we designed it to work so we could just view the Bible on our phones. And what it did was it changed how I was engaging in the Bible. I found myself very naturally just different places. I never read the Bible before, like the doctor's office, even the bathroom, which I know sounds really bad, but many people read their Bible now in the bathroom because it's on their phone. But just different. Some applause for the bathroom Bible readers. That's right. I don't care if you read the Bible in the bathroom. Just don't talk on the phone in the bathroom. It's really rude to do that. But anyway, I've got to get back on track here. What we realized was that it actually did change how we were engaging in the Bible because we had this device that was with us at all times. And right at that same point in time, that almost within a few weeks, Apple announced that they were going to make it possible for you to develop an app for the iPhone. And we thought, with what we're seeing on this website, this mobile website, what we're learning, what if the Bible could be among the very first apps that are available in the App Store? So we kind of like to move quickly. And we basically quickly moved to see if we could build an app for the App Store. Now, nobody back then knew how to develop apps. We had an 18-year-old that was on our team. He loved everything Apple. He could not buy enough Apple products. And that's the only requirement that you needed back then to be able to develop an app. You just had to love Apple. And so that's what we did. We had this 18-year-old on our team that worked part-time to kind of work to build this app. And sure enough, in July of 2008, when the App Store launched, the Bible app was among the very first, it was actually on the first day available in the App Store. Now that was a Thursday. It was July 10th, 2008, and we had no idea what to expect. But by Sunday, we were looking at the data and we had 83,000 people that had already installed the Bible app from Thursday to Sunday. And it totally blew our mind. We had no idea. We're standing there going, this doesn't make any sense to us whatsoever. We had no idea what to expect, but what we clearly knew was that God was doing something and that we needed to get behind it. And so that 18-year-old, it was his part-time job on Friday, and he came in to work on Monday, and it became his full-time job because we were determined that we were going to do everything we could to push on this and move it forward. We didn't know if it was just kind of a one-hit wonder, right place, right time. The Bible app on the iPhone, just happened to be there at the right moment. So we went ahead and tried other things. We tried developing for the BlackBerry, an app for the BlackBerry. And quickly it went straight up the charts to being in the top 25, all the way up to number 2 of all the BlackBerry apps. The Bible was number 2 on the charts. We did it for Android, and we went and kept doing it over and over and over again. And over the time, we built this coalition of publishers and partners and really a whole bunch of people from all over the world in different languages that provided the Bible text to us, and everyone just began to just be a part of this exciting movement of what we saw God doing, because those 83,000 people that we saw installed that Sunday, 5 years later we saw grow to be over 100 million smartphones and tablets. And the Bible is not just available in a few languages now, but we have it in over 450 languages, and we're adding hundreds of languages through the partners that we have all over the world. Yeah. What's even cool to me is that the Bible app has been downloaded and used in every single country on the earth, including countries that it's really, really challenging to be able to get a physical Bible into, because they just simply do not allow you to have a physical Bible. But the app has managed to work its way into every single country on the earth, and it's been entirely incredible. But what's amazing to me is, and clear, is that this started as an idea at an airport in Chicago, in a church in Oklahoma, not in Silicon Valley, or not in some place that's known for developing technology. And by people, quite honestly, our team is talented, but our team is not that talented. If you added up all of our abilities and put it on a list somewhere, and then you looked at the 100 million, it just doesn't make any sense except for the fact that it's entirely something that God's doing. We can take no credit for it. It's something that He's doing, and we're just getting to be a part of it. I can't even comprehend 100 million. I mean, there's like 10,000 people in this room. If I'm doing my math right, I think it's 10,000 times the number of people in this room is how much 100 million is. But what's amazing is God's grown our faith through this process where we didn't believe that was possible, but now we actually believe that 100 million is nothing compared to what He wants to do. That it's really just the very, very beginning. When we started this journey, there was all sorts of data and research and things that kind of indicated that this generation was becoming less engaged in the Bible than every generation before. And so much so that it was almost like a prediction that this generation was going to become a generation that was the least engaged in the Bible, cared the least about the Bible more than any generation that came before it. And people would be depressed and sad and rightfully kind of frustrated at what do we do if nothing changes? This is what's happening right now. But the great news is that something is happening right now. And we're not just seeing people install it, we're seeing billions and billions of minutes, actually over 1 billion hours of time that have been spent using the app to engage in God's Word. And our faith has grown to believe that it's not just possible that we could change that trend, that slide of engagement and kind of turn it around, but I actually believe that we'll see the most Bible-engaged generation in history. That's actually what I believe is possible. Yeah. Now, it used to be when I would tell this story that I would actually kind of end with that sort of prediction or statement or vision that God could make this generation the most Bible-engaged generation in history. But then I started thinking really recently, I started saying, what would that actually mean? What would it mean if this generation was the most Bible-engaged generation in history? And what I realized is it means that this generation, more than any generation before, would be making God's Word a lamp unto their feet and a light unto their path. That this generation, more than any generation before, us, that we would be hearing God's voice as a part of our daily life, just throughout the day. That this generation, more than any generation before in history, if that was true, that this generation would likely be stepping into God's calling and direction on our life, whatever it was that He was calling us to. We'd probably be much more likely than any generation before in history to be willing to be used by Him, whatever it is that He's calling us to, whether it's those of you that He's calling to become doctors, those of you that He's calling to become business leaders, those of you that He's equipping to be teachers, those of you that He's asking to be mothers and fathers, even preachers, that this generation would be a generation that doesn't just hear His voice, but steps into it. So then, when I start to think about perspective, I kind of thought for a second, wait a second. So if we have this unique time in history that we're alive in, where the population's exploding, we have more than 7 billion people alive today. We're more connected to that population than ever before in human history. And if we could become the most Bible-engaged generation in history at the same time that all of that is happening, it could be incredible. It's not an accident what God does. You see how those things fit together? God's placed all these people on this earth, and He's also equipping us to be able to answer His call, understand His voice and direction in our life, and be able to be a light to this world all at the same slice and time. in history, this entire world could be changed. Now, I see news reports, and I see books that have been written, and data that indicates that this generation is turning its back on God, that this generation is running from the church, that this generation cares less about the Bible than generations before. And then even more frustrated is I see people that just kind of wallow in despair and say, this is terrible, what are we going to do? But you see, I just think that's a backdrop for something that God's getting ready to do through this generation. Because from what I'm seeing, I see a different picture of the future than what the data and the reports and the books indicate about you and about us, about this generation. You see, I don't think that there's any way that God placed us here in this time in history so that we could simply have a front row seat to 7 billion people dying and going to hell. I don't think that's what our purpose is. I believe that God's not placed us here on accident, that we're here for a reason and for a purpose, and that this generation will not be a generation that's wasted. This generation will be a generation of greatness that God is going to use at this unique time in history to change this world. You see, just like Paul said to the Ephesians, he said that God is able and he stands ready to do immeasurably more than we could ever ask or imagine, and he does it at his work within us. Those of you that are willing in this generation to be used by God, to allow him to have his power at work within us, he, I promise you, will blow our minds with what he wants to do. He is going to do immeasurably more than we could ask or imagine, and when he does it, he's going to do it not so that we can get the credit or so that we can get the glory. He's going to do it so that his name will be known and be glorified all over this earth. And if I was a preacher, I would know how to pray and end this, but I'm not a preacher. That's my prayer. That right there, that is my prayer. Amen.